Welcome to The Life Engineer with Matty J. He unpacks and interviews guests to share the tools, components, and software that's needed to build a life and mindset by design versus one of default.
Bosh, welcome to the podcast, Danny Keefe. How you doing, mate? You all right?
All good, mate. All good. Thanks for having me.
We might as well start talking now because we'll end up talking about stuff that's good stuff to talk about, and we might as well just get stuck straight into it. So yeah, I've got a couple of points to go through, but yeah, do you want to just start off and introduce yourself? Just let Dan the Lift Man, aka.
Yeah, AKA, yeah. So obviously, my name's Danny Keefe. Work for Target Lifts. I've also got a handle which is known as Dan the Lift Man. Obviously, so the guys that do know me will know that every now and then I do a little video, record it on TikTok, and put it on LinkedIn. Basically, that's where the Dan the Lift Man stuff comes from. But yeah, I've been in the game. I'm 41 now. I've been in the lift industry since I was 16. I've done a bit of everything. I've done construction. I've done service. I've done repairs. I'm obviously now in sales. So for many a year, I used to work with a geezer called Terry. And he went, Dan, you've got far too much flannel to be a lift engineer, mate. You should be selling something to someone. And I finally took the plunge, and touch wood, it's working out very well indeed.
Yeah, I see your videos come up. So we've only spoke once on Zoom, and we've chatted a bit on LinkedIn, but I see your videos start coming up. And one of the reasons I sort of wanted to reach out. One is that is one of the points of us is you're open. Chatting about mindset and stuff on there, and you got involved with the mindset walk up to Wales. So yeah, have a chat a bit about that. How did you get involved in going up to Wales and doing that?
So I see Mark, obviously. So Mark Harding, he has up the lift mental health charter. I see a few things on LinkedIn, to be fair. And look, mental health, not just for men, like for everyone, but it's a massive thing. I've had some bad stuff happen over the last few years, and some of it was difficult. Do you know what I mean? It ain't always been an easy ride. Everyone looks at me. I'm always happy. But every now and then, obviously, you have that stuff that's happening in the background that no one gets to see. And trying to deal with that sometimes can be difficult. But if you've got the right people around you, then you can overcome anything. Do you know what I mean? And for me, I've been with my missus 20 years. She's unreal. She's like some of the stuff that we've gone through, and she's looked after me. Do you know what I mean? There's been a couple of things that has happened, and as I say, if you've got good people around you, you can come through anything. So whether that be family, friends, colleagues. I mean, obviously you're at work much more often than you are anywhere else. If you've got good colleagues around you, people that can look after you at work, it's good stuff. Like people that recognise that he seems off today. He's usually, especially me, I'm 100 mile an hour, so I think it's quite evident if I'm having a bad day. I think it's probably a lot more visible because I'm usually so high energy and always trying to have a laugh, and I'm either singing or I'm dancing or I'm doing something stupid, usually not what I'm meant to be doing. I think so when I see it, I was like, wow, I didn't realise there was a lift related one. And I was like, that's interesting. That's something that I'd quite like to tap into. Spoke to Mark on a few occasions. He told me about Snowdon. I thought, mate, I'd love to be a part of that, like raising money for a good cause. Also meeting other like-minded people, and getting together, talking about, mate.
Let me just grab this one.
Go on, mate. Go on.
Yeah. So I did a walk up with my son, and he got that for me. One Christmas. So because that walk up Snowdon, I remember doing a job in Cambridge. I was at a major lift company, and I was in a meeting, and literally I just got the arse ripped out of me by this construction guy. It was a big project. I think we just had like 18 lifts on one side of it and 16 lifts on the other. So it was a big project, and
massive.
And we didn't have the lifts ready, but I had to bullshit and this guy just went mad in a massive open planned office. But I remember it really knocked the wind out of me. And I thought to myself, I should have either ran away or stood up and said something. But I just sort of sat and
Yeah,
took it.
yeah,
And that weekend, I went off with a mate of mine down to Wales and climbed a mountain. And it was a really good thing for me to do
yeah,
to get over it, because that walk up there is a challenge. And but it's also such a space to get to put some perspective in.
yeah. 100%, mate. It's, well, look, for me, I'm not going to be on the front of Men's Health anytime soon. It's you know what I mean. So I'm not the six pack is well and truly gone, mate. That went as soon as I started having jam lovely pole on a Wednesday night around the missus' house. But I'm like, and I did think, I sort of got there and I thought, it's easy. Like I see some of the people that were doing it, and I thought, I'm going to fly up here, and I hit a wall massively. It was a bit. I was like, mate, all I want to do is sit down. Like we had, it was quite silly the night before. But we had, so where we stayed, there was a pub across the road. Euros were on. Pub opened at 5. First game's on at 5. The boys were putting up the tent. Obviously, I was no help, so I just said, right, what I'm going to do, boys, I'm going to fly in the pub. I'm going to get us a nice little plot for the football, and go from there. We were still in the pub at 11 o'clock, so It weren't the best. It weren't the best preparation for obviously what was a massive thing that we would doing the following day. But when you have, I think if you do it and you do it with, I always say it's great to be around people that are better than you, stronger than you, because it makes you aim higher. And obviously I've done it. So the boys I've done it with, Tony, obviously one of the owners, directors, he's as fit as a Bush's dog. He does his stuff over weekends. Paul Hewitt's a runner. Ashley's a young guy. Charlie's a young guy. I was easily the unfittest one now by a considerable mile. But because those guys are in front of you have the pressure to keep up. And it's one of them ones, and you sink or swim. And lucky enough for me, I mean, I ended up getting there, I think, 5 minutes after the boys. But the fact that I was 5 minutes and not 5 hours was a massive testament to me, because I did think there was a couple of points where I was like, I'm not even sure I can do this. This is bad. And the weather we had, even though it was in the summer, it was I think it was -4 when we got to the top, and it was snowing. And I was like, this don't make any sense. Do you know what I mean? To me? But you got the layers on. It was interesting. But I mean, look, once we got to the top, I was like, mate, the sense of achievement.
Yeah, that's what I remember. I was climbing.
It was.
My best mate's brother, he takes school kids and stuff up there. He's a headmaster. And so he had like ropes and all that sort of stuff. And we went up, we actually went to Tryfan first. That was the one that we did, which was one that's more like you can't walk up it, you got to climb. And it took us up this route. And I remember going up this route. And at some point, I had one hand on one rock, one hand on the other, and one foot. And I had to sort of leap up. But behind me was like, it wasn't like a sheer drop, but there was a good drop down to a ledge, and then there was a fucking great big drop down behind it. And I remember being on there, and I remember thinking, I wish I could suck my like lips onto the rock. I remember shitting myself, right? And then I crawled up the top and dragged it off, and he started trying to tell me about this etiquette of like knees and belly and stuff. I'm like, mate, I'm sticking to this rock. What I think it was good for me at the end, and there was also a point, because fear's really good. There was a point there where there was like a ledge that I had to go to that had a sheer drop either side, and it would be something you'd normally walk. It's probably the width of a path. Because it was so high, I remember getting on my hands and knees because the fear just debilitates you. But I remember afterwards that puts things in perspective, and I think. And that was good with mindset, and that element of adversity, that what can happen now, like I've climbed a mountain, that meeting was nothing.
No, mate, 100%. I mean, look, we spoke the other day, and I was saying one of my favourite sayings is smile and nod. And like I've had a couple of situations where you've been put in a right compromised position, and you've got someone putting it on you, and there's other people there. And to be fair, me probably 5-6 years ago, I wouldn't have been able to handle that. Certainly wouldn't have been able to handle that. I would have probably I'd have either stormed out, or I'd have probably said something that I shouldn't have said. But obviously, as you grow up, as you mature, I know it's outrageous to say that I'm still maturing at 41 years of age, but you do mature. Like the job for me, maturing into the role. Obviously, going from an engineer where you can act how you act, and then being in a position of obviously you're office based. You looked at differently. You have to command the room differently. There's a level of respect that you probably don't have as an engineer, but that also comes with other things. You know what I mean? An engineer won't be spoken to like that by someone like that. He might get it from his direct boss, but you're not going to get it from the client per se. Whereas for us, obviously, we're the front end, so something's going not particularly well, and they want to have that discussion. Sometimes you're sort of put into that, but I do now. I think even when it's happening, I'm just like, yeah, okay, just don't. It's like water off a duck's back.
Yeah.
Whereas before, I probably get quite emotional about it. I get very, you know what I mean. I can be quite I used to be quite an angry guy at times, especially when Arsenal lose, and if I'm being told off predominantly. But yeah, nice. But it's like mindset and trying to. Smile and nod is just. I think for me, I find it that don't let it show that it's bothering you. And just compose yourself and make sure that your reaction is the right one. I think it's really important.
Yeah, I did a white collar. I've done a couple of white collar. Well, the first one I came second, and then the second one I was training for, and then a week before I broke my nose sparring. But I was working. I had a coach, and I was working on the element because first time I could feel that fear. It's debilitating. It was sort of exhausting. I'd done the 3 rounds, but I remember thinking I've got to be more comfortable. So when I went back to sparring, it's like, how do you get comfortable in that situation? And time spent is one of them. But the other thing that came up was this innate fear of failure. And he asked me, like, what can you summon in terms of a thought of love or something like that? And you would have thought it would have been my wife or my kids, but it was my dog. Like the thought of my dog. Because when I open the cabin up in the morning, he comes bounding up. We have this routine, and he dives and he does these spins round and that. But it just brought joy. It just brought joy to me. But what I actually did that worked the best was when I used to come out to spar, I used to wink at the guy before we'd start punching the shit out of each other. But that was so cheeky. It made me laugh. I was like, and afterwards he was like, "Did you wink at me before we started?"
Yeah, mate. I love a cheeky wink
because it made me laugh. My breathing would relax a little bit. It just brought that state in. And one of the things I wanted to chat and talk to you about, because you're a geezer in the lift industry. You talked about coming up in the lift industry in a company where there was all sort of East End or South London geezers.
Oh, mate, yeah.
And this element of soft and open, because lift industry is a good industry. Probably scaffolders is another industry where soft and open isn't normal.
Yeah.
Just can you understand and talk about that openness to talk about stuff? Because you talk openly on your videos about your mental health and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, look, like for me, so I started out in the lift game when I was 16, and I went from being Jack the lad at school, very cheeky, do you know what I mean, getting away with it. Everyone's the same age, you get away with it. Obviously, I went from school to a building site, and mate, the learning curve was steep. It was like, wow. And I was like 9 stone soaking wet. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't lift anything. Like I remember, I was working with a guy, and he went to me, "Dan, go and get me a 20 mil Copex gland." And I looked at him going, "What the fuck's a Copex gland?" I didn't know. And you got called green. Oh, he's green. He's fucking green. He don't know this. He don't know that. He can't lift anything. So you basically get treated as like a lackey. So you just went and got the teas. And if he wanted a sandwich, you had to go and get him a sandwich. and it was a very, very brutal place for a 16-year-old. So, and I remember coming home. There was once where I come home and I'd had a day where I just got it from the minute I got in, working with like three, big characters as well, like within the firm, and I just got it like from 8 o'clock in the morning. And I remember getting home and I sat on the end of my bed and I was like, I nearly burst into tears. I was like, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can do this anymore. Like, is this a bit of me? I was meant to enroll for a college course, doing. I can't even remember what it was, but it was a computer course. But I got paid, and I was like, mate, it's worth going to college. I just got 850 quid. I was like, that's me. I'm out. So I was going out at 16 and doing bits. But I remember coming home, and I thought, I've made a massive mistake. Maybe I'm not ready for this. I'm not ready, like at 16. And I remember my mum saying to me, "Oh, like, you all right?" And I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. Obviously, typical bloke for even at 16. Yeah, no, I'm fine. And it was one of them ones. I had to suck it up. But the one thing and to be fair, and I say to, like, I talk about it with like my missus and my mates, and it built a resilience in me that I wouldn't have got anywhere else. So at 16, obviously, you gradually start building up a wall and a resilience to the banter and to the teasing, you know what I mean? But by the time I was 18, I didn't take no messing, mate. There was nothing. So even with the Larry geese, I was giving it back to him and some. And there was a couple of times where it actually got physical on a couple of occasions. But by this time, 2 years later, I am lifting guides on my own. I am picking up the big council spec doors on my own. And you know what I mean? And I do know what a 20 mil Copex gland is. So you're learning all the time. Physically, but obviously mentally you become like, it built such a resilience. But at the same time, like, and I think I spoke about it when I done it with Alex. I'm like, would I want it for my kids? No way.
Yeah, so I did a walkthrough with Mark and the lift industry mental health guys on the workshop I do, and there's a section in the workshop talks about weeds versus flowers, and I talk about this is for boundaries, and the reason I use the analogy is because you want to know where that personal protection's needed and those boundaries, because some people, and I talk about my mum versus my dad, like the difference of plants in the garden. The only difference between a weed and a flower is how it serves the garden. When you look up the meaning, one serves the garden powerfully and one serves the garden negatively or positive negatively, like a daisy or or a tulip or something, versus like some sort of weed or ivy or stinging nettles, and people are the same. And I joke that I'm borderline. I'm like a rose, right? I'm colorful, I'm joyful, but I'm also a bit of a prick. But I like that. When you talk about humor, I went to the co-working space, and my sister and my niece are working there. And the first thing I did when I got to the table was just flicked all their pens and stuff on the floor. And she's like, "But just what? Why was that funny?" I said, "I don't know. It just brings me so much joy." It's like there's a point between what's funny and what's narcissistic. There's a line with that banter with the lads, because you can imagine it now. Someone coming on the site and giving them shit because they can't do stuff, and you can imagine that banter and the joy that some of the guys will get taking a piss. But there's a line between, you know, on that being sort of gentle humor, and some of it at some point can get bad, and you've got the ability to chat and have that banter to give it back. There's probably a lot of people that sit and suffer that for years, and other people that it is unhealthy. But it's especially coming up in an industry like this, having a way to have a chat and a conversation where it's a bit like in a boxing ring, like what's a low blow and what's a bit of banter, because that growth and that resilience is needed. You'd want your kid to be strong and able to adapt in those situations, and part of that is a bit like the sparring. The reason you have to spar is if you're going to fight, you've got to be comfortable in that level of uncomfortability. You know, people
Yeah,
going to war. You know, you can't
yeah,
just pretend to play guns and then go into battle and have someone trying to
yeah.
stab you in the head. And
Well, that's I mean, the saying is, isn't it? Everyone's got a plan until you get punched in the face. And it is true. You might think that you're going to be a good fighter, but like I say, if you're not sparring, if you're not doing that, and you step into the ring, you're going to very quickly find out that actually I'm not ready for this. And as soon as you get punched in the face,
yeah,
it's like, fuck, yeah, well, what do I do now? Do you know what I mean? I'm not ready for this. I should have trained for this. I should have sparred for this. Obviously, boxing's a great analogy, but it's anything you do. If you're not putting the prep in, then you could very quickly come unstuck in certain situations. So,
yeah, and I think it's again coming into this space of talking about it and being vulnerable. I always say my coaching sessions like sparring. You know, you're going to get if you want to create the unstoppable you. The idea of a coach is to find all the areas where you're not unstoppable and expose them, and it can be really
yeah,
vulnerable. And having an honest and open conversation like that level we talked about honesty because there's levels of it. Someone talked about layers, you know, like you're all right, yeah, I'm fine. You know, that's you and
yeah.
the lads at work, and then you come home, you speak to the missus, and you're all right. Yeah, well, yeah, it's a bit of a shit day, and this, that, and the other, and you'll maybe expand on it a little bit, and then you'll put your head on the pillow, and you'll be talking to yourself, and there's a whole level of how you really, really, really feel. Um, and sometimes there's so many when you talked earlier on about building up walls and stuff that we create this thing
Yeah.
of I'm all right when actually having those conversations when you're in that moment there, when you want to cry, and it is that space of vulnerability in it where it's like this is horrible, mum. That's horrible to me. Yeah, I've
Fees.
got
My mum's from South London as well, mate, so she can just
to
go, fucking get on with it. What's the matter we are?
kick the shit
So,
out of you. I've got a
yeah.
dummy usually hanging up here. There it is there. That I joke around putting next to my gum shield with my trainer when I went sparring because when he used to shout out gum shields in, it meant we was going to
Yeah.
be sparring. And there was part of me when I went to get my gum shield that I actually just wanted to pick up a dummy and run home and say, "Mummy, I don't want to do it anymore," because it's so hard.
Yeah, mate, and you know what is life can be brutal. I'm not being funny. It can be, and there is times where I mean, not sort of. I'm not talking about suicide or anything like that, but there is times where you think you just want to go, fuck this.
Yeah,
Do you
because
know
how
what I
many
mean? And
kids you got now?
I've got two boys, and they're 6 and 3, and mate, they're like they're mental, but it's lovely. Like I wanted two boys. Always wanted two boys. I've got two boys. My oldest is like me,
Oh
very
dear.
much like me. He's frightening. He talks. He's 6. He talks a Cockney rhyming slang. Already, he was talking. I dropped him at school this morning. He's freezing. He went, "Oh, Dad, I should have put my turtles on." I was like, "Yes, friends, love that." And and yeah, he's a cat. Like he's a massive character. He loves being centre of attention. Loves making people laugh. And he's obviously firstborn, so he's the prince. He was the first. He's our first child. He was the first grandchild. So
Oh,
the boy has had smoke blown up his backside from the minute he was born. Like, you know what I mean? People used to like he'd blink, and the fucking grandparents would lose their mind. They'd be like, "Oh, he blinked again." It's mental. Henry is the complete opposite, and it blows my mind to think we've obviously got two boys. Ideally, we've tried to raise them exactly the same. Henry doesn't give a monkeys whether you like him or not. Henry does what he wants to do. He's so fiery. He's so like it's ridiculous. The temper on him is mad. And we didn't see a tantrum out of Freddie until he was like 3.5.
really?
And Henry's like, God knows when we see the tantrum early doors, and he can still have them on a regular basis. I've got a massive thing about kids that stamp their feet, and every now and then he'll do it, and I'm like, "Oh, what are you doing? What does Daddy say about kids that stamp their feet? We're not doing that, Henry. We are not having it, mate. I'm not having it in my house." And he looks at me, but yeah, it's mad. Like very rarely I have to raise my voice for the boys. They're very good. But if I had to, Fred would just burst into tears. Henry would stamp his feet and walk off. It's like they're polar opposites.
It's funny. So my workshop I set up and called the mindset reset because what I realise, the mindset I'd say is foundational. I do these three things: mindset, movement, alignment. A bit like Ohm's law, but mindset I would say is foundational to everything. before you
yeah,
go off and build a business or whatever. But that baseline, but I would call it the mindset reset because it's a bit like a lift. Like you can get lost, and that what do? You turn it off and on again. How many times have people said in the lift industry, have you turned it off and on again? Because what it does, it brings it back down to somewhere it knows, and it aligns itself back to, oh, like I know where I am. I'm at the bottom floor now. I know
yeah,
where I am, and with mindset, I think it's really interesting to see because you think, when you're back at 16, you thought your troubles were bad, but you didn't have two kids, you didn't probably have a mortgage, you didn't have all that other
yeah,
stuff.
yeah,
So in the scale of stuff, like you step up, a bit like boxing weight, you step up and you think, oh, you laugh about flyweights now, flyweights, like it don't even hurt, and then you
yeah,
step up and suddenly you're heavyweight, like Target have got expectations of you, the missus, the family, the kids, the
yeah,
people rely on you. Are we going to get those sales at Target? Because all those engineers want their mouths
yeah,
fed. Like the game changes, and it's a bit like expanding businesses. I say to companies, they can step up and take on bigger projects, but they've got to have the legs, like they've got to have the bank balance. Because if they're going
yeah,
to stop paying, Joe Bloggs, so I'm not paying you that £2,000, like that might hurt him. But if you're a big
yeah,
company and suddenly you've got 200 grand being stopped, or they've not paid
yeah,
300 grand, like that stuff puts you on your ass if you're not. And it's the
yeah,
same with ourselves and our mindset. It's all relevant, isn't it?
yeah,
As you expand, so you can still lose your wobble now. I did this blog about finding your boohoos. Even though at our age, and I can feel it now sometimes. If I'm making a cup of tea and go to the biscuits, and my wife will be like, "Do you need that?" I'm like in the kitchen, like thinking, "Fuck off." Like a spoiled kid, don't tell me what to do. Like a little, it was almost like an inner tantrum that's like, no
yeah,
one
mate.
tells me what to do.
Little Danny, I call it. Little Danny comes roaring
they
out.
they come out.
Yeah,
But even in those moments where like you might be going into a meeting, or X, Y, and Z's going on, you still have to find ways to navigate back somehow. And I think the art is to do it like fitness. You went up to that mountain. How quick did it take you to recover versus the other guys? Like that
yeah,
element of fitness in recovery rate in these situations. But it was just interesting to speak to you being a sort of a geezer in the lift industry, moving up, like those things still happen, don't they? At
yeah.
your level, you still get caught doubting yourself, beating yourself up, feeling
Oh,
less.
mate, imposter syndrome, massive. When I left, obviously when I give up the tools and I took my first sales job, I think I had it massively. I was like, so even though look, I'm a people person, I love to talk. So I always say, you put me in a room with someone and I need to sell them something, I'll sell them something before I leave, whether it be a lift, whether it be a car, a new washing machine, whatever it is. I think I've got that. I'll have the ability to find my little niche with that person and obviously and close the deal. I love that side of it. But when I started, I've gone from just fixing lifts to dealing with clients, mate, the emails, the amount of emails that you have to do, the learning, so lift data, motor, that these are all things, Excel, and it's all. I think if you're office based, it's all simple stuff because you've done it for years. Trying to like, obviously, I mean, they say that you can't teach an old dog new tricks, and it was like coming in like nearly 40 and trying to learn this stuff. I was like, mate, this is like I found it really difficult, and I was like, I was having a similar thing. Like I come home and said to her, I was like, I don't know if I'm enjoying it.
Mm.
I don't know I don't know what if it's cracked up. And it took me a long time. I'd probably say 6 months. It took me a long time for me to actually go, no, Dan, you're good at this. You're fucking good at it, mate. You're going to be. This is what you're meant to be doing. But for the first 6 months, I questioned it. I questioned it more or less every day. I was
Don't
like,
you
should I
think?
be doing this?
Yeah, there's a lot of people that avoid that transition up into something right. Some people do it for the money or the glory, and actually they should stay fitting, and
Yeah,
they shouldn't be in the office. But other people transition up. I think some companies what they don't do is tool them up. Like I'm working with a client at the moment. He's got 10,000 emails in his inbox, and no one's talked to you about structuring how you manage your I said to you, if you was in the van, where would the drill bits be? Oh, in the such and such, in the such and such. You'd have,
yeah,
up to 10 mil in that one, like everything would have a place. And you come into the office,
yeah,
well, where's their same system? So we've used that analogy, and he's like, oh, I've got to get organised. Like
yeah, yeah,
having that same. It's a bit like all the gear on site and no idea in the office, but not
yeah,
transitioning up and giving you the tools. Like a boxer going to judo, it's like I've got no idea what to do on the floor. So
yeah,
like,
yeah,
it's a different skill set, isn't it? So there's
yeah,
that
mate, and yeah,
element of it, but there's also that, like you say, the imposter syndrome of you're transitioning into you're Danny that fixed lifts, not Danny that stands in front of
yeah,
executives and owners and multi-millionaires talking about selling them. It's a different space, isn't it?
yeah. No, 100%. I mean, look, obviously, so when I was there, we won. So we won the Apple contract, and that was just in the new year, and it's one of my mindset. So as I started to settle into the role, my confidence was then growing. And obviously we had Apple, we had another one, we had another massive thing in the West End, and I had two tender interviews back to back, like one on a Monday, one on a Tuesday, and smashed them both. Obviously, we won the Apple, we won the second one as well. And mate, I'll come out. I was like Conor McGregor walking down the road, mate. The shoulders are out, but I was like,
I'm the
I was like, this
man.
is me. This is what I should be doing. And it was nice. And closing deals like that, I was like, mate, this is 100%. This is where I need to be. I know, and obviously it's hard because you have people telling you, like I announced that I was doing it, everyone was like, Dan, you sell sand to the Arabs, you know what I mean? Ice to the Eskimos is because of my character, but it's all well and good having the character and having the thing, but you've still got to deliver. You still got to be able to do the job, and the admin and all the other stuff that comes with it. And touch wood, it took a bit of time, but it's ended up it's gone really well. When here, I mean, the one problem we had at the last place, it was I think they had too much on. They took me on. They see it, and when I spoke to the director, the manager, he's like, we see it in you. We knew, and to be fair, when I left, he went, I know you're gonna smash it, and he was like, I'm just gutted you can't smash it here. But there was obviously issues and whatnot, and yeah, it's gone mad. But here I've got someone, and I actually said it in my interview. I was like, I feel like I'm really good at this job, and I've had no training, none. I'm like, imagine how good I could be with just a little bit of guidance or a lot of guidance, depending on how much time. And to be fair, it's been the proof's in the pudding. I've come in, and Brendan's my sales director. And like obviously, I call him Morpheus
Oh, really?
because
Yeah,
he's and I know it's quite arrogant because I always say I was like, so I'm referring to myself as Neo.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well,
But
those three laws that I talk about: mindset, movement, alignment. Alignment, the one is purpose. We talked about football. What's the
yeah,
player that he calls you?
oh mate, if you got Harry Kane up front, then you don't put him in goal. Yeah, hundred
Yeah, and
percent.
that element of people understanding. I remember taking some fitters on site, and then the site agent coming up to me. He said, "Oh, I spoke to your charge hand," and I was like, "Who?" He was like, "Your charge, Jay." I was like, "Jay's the apprentice. He's only been here 3 days," but Jay was chatting to him like he was running the job. Yeah, mate, I'll get that sorted for you. I was like, "Jay, go and fit the lift." Don't clean the guides, but you could tell he was meant to be not fitting lifts. Like he'd be coming
Yeah,
back saying the builder's got me a bottle of wine. We're sharing this, we're doing this, and I was like, again, he was just a natural people. But you shouldn't be sat in a lift shaft on your own fitting lifts. You should be
yeah,
doing it with people, and there's an element of people being aware. Amount of engineers used to come up to me saying, I want to, I want to be a lift engineer. I'm like, why is that? Oh, because my mum says I've got to get an apprenticeship, and it takes 10 minutes to realize that's the last thing that they should be doing, but that
yeah,
self-awareness enough which you've got to know that you're in the right ballpark in that north element of dealing with people and building relationships and communicating
yeah.
is easy. It's easy for you. It's like it's
Yeah, no,
funny.
mate. And Matt, for me, so like, I love nothing more than like a problem client. Like, and obviously, and mate, don't get me wrong, they can come thick and fast sometimes. But I love nothing more. Like even so, obviously I'm a salesman. I love a big sale, but I'll probably get more of a kick out of like someone who's really hard, really difficult. He's kicking off left, right, and centre, but I'll break him. And next thing you know, he's as good as gold. He's one of the best customers you've got. Love speaking to me. Love speaking to the people. And it's like I love that because I'm like that for me. And I say I love putting out fires. So I'm like, bring me something, and it's on fire and it's all fucking going off. But I'll dive into it and I'm like, right, let's dissect it. What do I need to do here? Why is he unhappy? What have we got to do as a company to obviously change that? So change his mindset. What have I got to do to change his mindset? I want him to think differently about Target, about me, about the engineer that's coming out that maybe he's not overly happy with. And I love that, tapping into it and trying to find, like say about you could put me in a room with anyone. This guy in general, I met him the first time I met him. I was like, God, this guy's just going to be hard work. Now, unbelievable.
The
Like
thing
I
is,
speak to him.
when you
And
watch someone like Mayweather boxing and it looks so easy, like some people can watch you in a meeting and manage a relationship and think, oh, it's so easy. But there's so many parts to that. And a lot of I think why you're good at stuff is that ability to be open and communicate. Because I think that's one of the first things to build a relationship is that ability to connect and change your vibration a little bit to pick up with that person and connect, which I think is an art. But I was gonna finish with us on chatting about, so that side of things you've got, which if you talk about alignment is your, the power of you. Like I was just gonna ask you to speak about some of the things where you've struggled, and this podcast is about sort of the tips and tools to living a life by design. Where are some places or some things that you do struggle or you have struggled where you do X, Y, and Z to get back, or you struggle and you're not quite sure how to fix it? Like if we was talking about they're the big wins, like when does Danny get put on his ass or put on his knees? So stamping
Yeah.
toes, stamping feet is one where you're triggered.
Yeah. So, mate, I mean, look for me. So, like from a work perspective, look, sales can be a brutal environment, and there's nothing worse. And to be fair, and it took me a bit of time to get used to it, and you've got to take the emotion out of it. But there's nothing worse than you feel like you've put like some major effort gone into a 10-day. You've done everything. You've done it. You've ticked every box. You think there is no way. There's no way this ain't. We're not winning this job. It's just too like you've done everything you can. You know you've done everything. You know you're exactly where you need to be, and you find out it's gone elsewhere. That's like, and it took me a little while to get used to it because I'm murdered. So I have a big thing of, so if I'm in for something, I want to win it. Like I'm not that guy that goes, oh, I didn't win that one, don't worry about it.
Right.
And so I still get pissed off, but I do manage it differently. And I've had to be fair, I've had to learn that. And I think I had one, and mate, Brendan's been doing it a long time, and he's such a calming influence. And I think I had a job, I was really pissed off, and I put a massive amount of effort in, loads of back and forth with the consultant, changing this, changing that. Can you do this? Yeah, I can do that. No problem at all. I need a drawing. Yeah, I'll get you a drawing. And then you find out it's gone elsewhere. And you're like, wow, how has that happened? And I can't remember what he said, but Brendan he just brought a completely different, he was like, you can't worry about that. Like you can't, that's so out of your control. You know you've done a really good job there. And he was like, you just need to concentrate on that. You know you've done everything you can. And you know that if he'd have gone with us and he'd have a far better job. He's decided not to do that, and that's obviously up to him. But he was like, you can't let it bother you. And I'm like, no, 100%, I get that.
Yeah.
But
You
that
said
is
earlier on
bothering
about
me some way.
the people around you. It's a bit like having those people in your corner, and
Yeah.
that makes a difference to you. So
Yeah.
without him, you'd have maybe flustered on for a few days or
Yeah, I'd have probably sulked for another week or so. Yeah, but he's yeah, no, he's good. And that's, like Matt, he's having the right people around you is so important, mate. Even like whether it's at home, whether it's at work, it's so important. And obviously here, when I was obviously in my last place, I felt like I was very much on my own. And sometimes if it's not going well, it's a lonely place to be. You know what I mean? You're in an ocean and you look around and there's nothing now. And I do feel like I was thrown, and I use it a lot. I was thrown in the deep end massively, and it was sink or swim. And lucky enough for me, I found it in me to swim, and I found the island or the life raft, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, it can be a lonely place.
Don't you
So
think
if you
that element of leadership though makes a massive difference of having someone to pick you up there? How quick that transition and growth can be if you've got the right person behind you.
100%, 100%, and to be fair, testament to the boys at Target. So, and I've done a little video when it was my anniversary. I was here a year on the 13th, and mate, testament Tony, Danny, Brendan. If you look at what I am now to what have I improved, mate? I've improved no end, absolutely no end. Has my character changed? No. If they tried to change my character, no. They see what I was good at, and they've not tried to pigeonhole that. So I had someone who tried to really pigeonhole me, and I was like, "You can't pigeonhole me. I'm not that guy. You can't put me there and go, Dan, you just do this. Can't do that. I'm good. I'm good at lots of different things. So don't just say to me, Dan, you just do that, because I can also step in and do that really well, and I can step in and do that really well. So don't waste me on just concentrating on one thing. Let me loose. Let me do what I'm good at. Let me speak to the clients. Let me put problems to bed. Let me sell. Let me do." And to be fair, here the boys have just embraced it and they've gone, "Off you go, mate." And
Yeah, I think
touch wood, it's worked out.
there's an art in that, getting the best out of everyone individually. So to wrap up, in terms of you chatting to the lift industry or construction and mindset, is there anything you want to sort of add, or what's your plans moving on with Dan the Lift Man? Are you gonna do some regular videos or?
Yeah, no. So I mean, look, for me, the plan always was to move into podcasts. It was, so I wanted to start off. Obviously, people get used to Dan the Lift Man and know obviously what I'm about. And it's mad because everywhere I go now, everyone knows who I am. And it can be embarrassing at times because I'm murder with names. So like someone will come and go, "Oh, hello, Dan, you all right?" And I'm like,
Yeah.
no idea who you are, mate. But rather than just go, "Yeah," because I'm murder, so everyone's mate. Because I'm like, because
Yeah, I'm
then
like
if his name is Joe and I've been calling him Ben for half hour, he's going to get the umpany. But if I just call him mate, then I can try and then after later on I'll go, "Mate, who is that guy that was?" And they're like, "Oh, that's Joe." I'm like, fuck for that. I nearly called him Ben. So lessons learned. But yeah, I don't know what.
So your podcast, you're going to move on, and
What I've done
everyone
there.
chatting to you about the podcast and
Yeah, no. So sorry. So podcast. So the game. So for me, I wanted to move into. So eventually move into podcasts. And yeah, just have a chat. Like for me, look, talk about the mental health side of it. Like obviously, when I was service engineers predominantly are on their own, unless they've got an apprentice with them. But usually they're on their own. And obviously, we live in a world now where everyone's tracked, depending on what company you work for. Some of them have got 15-minute services. You've got to get your route done. You know what I mean? The pressure that comes with the job now. Whereas when I was coming up through the industry, we always met in the cafe. Part of the reason I'm the fucking size I am now is because of that. It was
yeah.
So you meet in the cafe. So first thing in the morning, you're in the cafe. You're back in the cafe at lunch. But obviously, what comes with that is you're seeing your mates. You get to see your mates. See your mates in the morning. See your mates in the afternoon. So even if you are having a shit day, at 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, you're going to have a cup of tea with the boys and you can have a laugh and you can put all that to bed. I feel like that don't happen now. Well, it might still happen in places, but it definitely don't happen as much as it used to. And I think that's worrying because look, obviously we're in a world now, especially the younger generation. They're maybe they're not as thingy, maybe not as resilient. And I think that to me is a concern. And I think it's important to check in with your boys, make sure everyone's all right. If you used to see Dave in the cafe every Monday for a cup of tea and you ain't seen him for a month, then give him a bell, mate. Just make sure that Dave's all right. Do you know what I mean? I think
Yeah,
it's a really important thing to harness.
I watched someone talking the other day about generations and families that we used to be brought up by families of aunties and uncles and
Yeah,
neighbors. You know, like when you look at chimps and animals, a lot of them are brought up in communities. But now I think there's a lot of insular elements. I see it with my son gaming and different elements of communication, like my daughter chatting to her mates on the phone versus getting on their bikes and cycling up and spending time like there's just this element of
yeah,
connection that's been lost. So
yeah.
yeah, I mean that'd be good. So what would your plan be? Just to do a podcast and have guests from the lift industry in, or
Yeah, 100%. I mean, look, mate, I've got so obviously such an incestuous thing in it. I've got family. I've got lots of family in the lift industry. I've been doing it since I was 16. I've got a lot of good people and people that have been doing it a long time. So I've like different demographic. I've got someone in their 70s to own lift firms that I'd love to tap into and talk to him about it and to change. I mean, if you're an owner, imagine seeing like all them different generations
mm.
and to see it, but also tap into like some younger guys as well. So guys maybe just started their apprenticeship. Like how do you find it? What do you notice about the? And it'd be good because you can talk about well, this is what I was dealing with. How are you? And obviously they're going to be worlds apart. Do you know what I mean? I've done my apprenticeship a long time ago. So I know they're going to be very different now.
Listen, Dan, you'll have
But
to
yeah,
have
that's
me on your podcast when you set it up and do it. We'll come on
hundred
and
percent, mate.
talk about
100%.
life in the lift industry. So yeah,
Yeah.
well, yeah, send over. I'll put any links in the bottom of your people can contact you and get in touch with you at Target Lifts. And
Yeah,
yeah,
100%. Yeah.
keep smiling, Dan.
Yeah, mate, all day long. Keep smiling. All
Cheers for
day,
coming
mate.
on, mate.
That is what it's about. Matt, been an absolute pleasure, mate. Thanks for having us on. All right, I'm sure
Nice.
we'll catch up.
Take care.
Top man. Take it, mate.